This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome everyone, and welcome to our guests today, Julie Owens and Silvana. Today we're going to hear from Julie as the federal member for Parramatta. I just thought I might, today's, as you know, my daughter's started Ramadan this year. So I asked her, what do sprinters eat before a race? And she said nothing, they're fast.
Okay.
They're not getting any better, Barry.
Okay, am I on?
Well, yeah. Well, look, if everyone can mute except for Julie, we will. I'll introduce Julie. Julie has been a member of our club, and she is currently an honorary member of our club. So we've had a very long relationship with her.
Can you just put me back on?
And I think for most Rotarians across Sydney,
I had to do that because Julie's talking to the speaker. But I just want to see the
up in the top right-hand corner, there'll be a little round circle with a microphone in it, and it'll be green. Push it, and it'll go grey. Rose?
Yeah.
The top there. Just...
I'm so sorry.
All right.
It's all right. It's all, you got it.
There you go. Go, Barry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Right.
Yeah. So Julie's fairly well known across the whole region of our district because he supplies us with a list each week of grants that are available. And I know a number of clubs have taken those up and forwarded them on. They actually made those applications. So, Julie, your emails go far and further afield than Parramatta. I should let you know that, and they're greatly appreciated. Julie, as you know, she was born in Rockhampton, and so she's a Queenslander by birth, but a passionate Parramatta person. I think everyone can remember seeing Julie around the areas of Parramatta, greeting and meeting people. She's a very hands-on person. But I'll let Julie now speak about the current situation and what her thoughts are on where we're going and any other relevant information she may have for us today. So thank you very much, Julie.
Thanks, Barry. Well, they're interesting times. I just want to start really quickly by talking about the coronavirus itself. Most of you probably know this, but I'll just say it. The coronavirus is a pretty common kind of virus. They're responsible for the common cold right through to SARS. So there's a range of them, but the coronavirus tag is actually a category of virus. This one is known as COVID-19 because it was a coronavirus which emerged for the first time, as far as we know, in 2019. So it's a particular strand along the spectrum of the common cold right through to SARS, which is really quite deadly. They're viruses. Most of them don't have vaccines. There still isn't a vaccine for SARS. Now, at the moment, if you listen to all the news, you can get the impression sometimes that we're going to be out of this soon and sort of starting to reconnect again. But you can also get the impression that it's going to be a long haul. My personal view is that it will be longer than people realise. There's just too much we don't know. We don't know whether you get immunity yet. World Health Organization said yesterday that they're not sure whether you get immune. They don't know whether the virus people are shedding is later on is dead or alive. So they don't know whether you retain your immunity for a length of time, and they don't know whether you can still give it to people further on down the track. We don't know how many people are carrying it without symptoms. The figures vary. Some countries say that it's up to 60% of people don't show any symptoms. Other countries say it's only 30%. We don't know at what point you get contagious. Are you contagious before you get symptoms? Are you only contagious? We don't know that. We kind of know now that it can hang around in the air for up to 3 hours, that it can survive on a hard surface for days. We don't really know which surfaces. So there's just so much we don't know. We don't know if it's transferred through food. We do know it exists in poo. Norman Swan has said it also exists in farts, so no nude bottom farting. which is kind of funny, but not. So the effect of flushing a toilet without closing the lid, for example, we don't know. There's just too much we don't know, and there's conflicting medical advice about children. Children usually spread coronaviruses. This one may be different. We have conflicting advice. So there's just too much we don't know, and we don't know whether there will be a vaccine or not. So we're luckier than most countries, though, because we're behind other countries, so we're learning from other countries' mistakes. We did shut down early. The states pushed that particularly. There were some businesses that shut down before the states did. So a lot of people were able to watch what was happening overseas, and we shut down early, so our transmission appears to have been very low. We're only just starting more testing. So again, we don't know who out there has it, who isn't showing symptoms. Where there's much we don't know, but it does appear that we've kept it essentially well under control. But now we get to watch what happens when other countries that have brought it under control start to relax their social distancing. We saw New Zealand relaxed a couple of weeks ago, and a major school had a breakout. Korea started to, Singapore started to rise again. So we can watch others now and learn from their mistakes. But I honestly believe, and I've told my staff this, that I don't think my office will reopen for 5 or 6 months. Now, there's two reasons for that. Firstly, I don't think the entire economy can reopen at once. We have to keep the pace down. And offices like mine can stay closed without real consequences. We still work, we still get paid, so my staff are still fine. We can do the job, and we don't need to open our doors and help spread the virus in order to do our work. There are others that have to. And so if anyone opens next, it won't be us. My view is that workplaces like mine that can stay closed should stay closed as long as they possibly can, so that other sectors can open. But I think we're in for quite a long haul. I shut my office before most. I shut my office the week before Scott Morrison was going to go to the football, so we were really early, and I've told mine it will be closed for at least 6 months. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I suspect we're in for a really, really long haul. There's been talk about two ends of the spectrum. One is killing it off by simply making sure it can't be transmitted at all, and Australia could probably do that. But if we did that, we would have to leave our borders closed indefinitely, because the minute you let someone in from somewhere else, it starts again. The other idea was herd immunity. That's the other extreme, which means you let it rip so that large numbers of people get immunity. That would have overstretched our health system to an extraordinary extent. And you can see in countries where that's happened, countries like Italy, for example, where they're essentially saying if you're over 60, we're sending you home. We just can't look after you. And nobody could get into a hospital unless it was COVID-19. So people who needed, cancer treatments were just out in the cold. So we've avoided a lot of really bad stuff, but I think it's going to go on for quite a while if we want to avoid bad stuff between now and Christmas. And I want to talk about the speed with which this spreads, because sometimes in Australia we get it right and then we don't realise how right we got it. So I want to explain patient 31. In case you haven't heard about it, patient 31 was the 31st person that got it in Korea. Korea had 30 cases. They'd managed it beautifully. They had it totally under control. They knew it was coming. They were doing incredibly well. And then the 31st person was diagnosed. And then the 31st person didn't pay any attention to what they were supposed to do. And in the days between her test and the diagnosis, she travelled to various spots. She was involved in a minor traffic accident, was checked into hospital. She attended 2 church services. She went for lunch at a hotel with a friend. And a few days later, she went to a church service where hundreds of people attended. So she was patient 31. She turned in 10 days, she'd infected 2,300 people in 10 days. That could be directly be tracked back to that one patient 31. That's why it's known as patient 31. A major cluster had whole areas of Korea shut down because of this one person. And the reason why it's so dangerous is that unlike the influenza, for example, it's actually extremely contagious. The medical fraternity believes that influenza, one person infects maybe 1.3 people. But with COVID-19, one person infects between 3 and 7 people. So the difference with that is if one person gets influenza and gives it to one person, in 10 transmissions, it reaches about 256 people, right? As one person infects 256 people by the time it's transmitted 10 times. If one person gets COVID-19 and it only transmits to 3 people, not 7, then in 10 transmissions, it reaches 65,000 people. So one person in an open, economy, if we hadn't shut down, would have infected up to 65,000 people in 10 transmissions. It's incredibly contagious, which is why countries have been so aggressive in the social distancing and the shutting down, because it spreads so fast. So where we are now is essentially not quite a complete lockdown, but very close to a complete lockdown. And we're starting well and truly to see the impacts of that. In the last 4 weeks or so, I've had a lot of people, particularly over the age of 70, or people who are domestic violence victims, who simply are not online because they don't know how or because they're not safe, who can't shop online with Woolies and Coles, for example, because you can only buy from Woolies and Coles online. So which meant that, a lot of older people and people who are quite vulnerable for different reasons need to do phone orders, and the big supermarkets won't. My staff talked to a stack of the small grocers, and the local IGAs are now taking phone orders and doing deliveries for a lot of people over the age of 70. Computer Pals for Seniors, which is an organisation that's been around for a long time, is preparing hard copy instructions for people to get online and start shopping online, and then they follow that up with a phone call. So they're trying to increase the number of people who can shop online. The Community Wheels, which is a community organisation which has historically had 240 drivers delivering people to events, picking up people and taking them to community outings, are now doing deliveries from anywhere to anywhere, which is great, because it means if you want some Indian groceries, you can get it picked up from the Indian grocer, or the Chinese grocer, or the Korean grocer. So we're starting to find a range of different solutions come into play. There's a number of community organisations, the Tamils, there's a group from, it's called Labor Tamils, it's a group of Tamils in the Labor Party, have started doing delivery of essential items to people who have no money at all. They're doing very well. There's a Sikh community that is doing that as well, and I hope I'm not going to run out of power at some point. I seem to be charging but not charging. They are not as good at social distancing as others, so we're going to have to try and teach them to do it. There's a whole range of changes to My Aged Care for people who would have had to wait ages to get service. They can now get into Meals on Wheels very quickly. Meals on Wheels is also delivering other essentials like toilet paper now. So there's a whole range of things that are happening in the community that make it easier for people who still have money, even though they might not have a lot of it. But there's a huge growing group now of people that don't have any money. In the JobKeeper and Job Seeker programs. The Job Seeker program is the old New Start Work for the Dole. Sorry, New Start and Dole payment. That's basically unemployed people. And JobKeeper is the program that the government introduced to pay the wages of people whose businesses are effectively hibernating. That JobKeeper program also pays sole traders, partners, directors of companies, a whole range of other people as well. But it's essentially about partly paying the wages of people whose businesses are in hibernation who aren't able to cover their wages. But there's some huge gaps. Early on, charities were missing completely, and the government's made some changes for that, but still some of the sections within charities are not covered for various reasons. Government council workers aren't covered at all, so they're having to go on unemployment benefits. But the big missing area is the non-residents, people who aren't permanent residents, which includes all of our skilled visas. There wouldn't be a restaurant in Parramatta that doesn't have a chef who's on a skilled visa. A lot of our manufacturers have got them. A lot of our medical fraternity are. A lot of our shelf stackers were. So there's a whole stack of people who are now without any measure of support at all. And the other forms of support, like the agreements on rental, for example, depends on you being on job seeker or job keeper. So if you happen to be a skilled migrant who doesn't have their permanent residence yet, you are pretty much out on your own. There's also a bunch of people on what's called an 887 visa. They're people who are completely qualified to be permanent residents. They've been here for a long while. They've been through all the tests. They're on their path to permanent residence, but there's been a delay in the department over the last couple of years. They're now out on their own as well, and I'm getting calls from them. They're married, they've got Australian children, and they're essentially out on their own. The changes that the government have made only start kicking in today. Job seeker, which remember New Start was doubled. Well, actually, it wasn't doubled until today. And the asset test changes and all those changes only come into effect today. So a whole stack of those people that queued up around Centrelink 4 or 5 weeks ago haven't received any money at all as of today, and their applications will only start being processed today. So that they've had no money. Some of those had been retrenched by their employers because their employers, retrenched them and paid out their entitlements before JobKeeper came along. So there's a lot of confusion and a lot of stuff, if you like, that's going on. The payments to businesses don't come out until May, so there hasn't been any money flow to businesses at all at this point. So the whole JobKeeper thing where they can keep their staff, there's been no money flow and won't flow until the end of May. The banks have been asked to step in. The banks have now started hotlines directly for businesses that are struggling to bridge the gap between now and when the JobKeeper payments start flowing at the end of May. And so there's a whole range of, there's lots of announcements, but there's enormous delays. So I'm hearing from people now who are starting to collect groceries and essential supplies, including nappies and baby formula, for people who have no source of income and have no protection for their rentals because they're not eligible for job seeker or job keeper, and they can't go back to their country of origin because they can't travel there, because their borders are closed, and even if they did, they haven't lived there for 7 or 8 years. So we have huge issues in the community that we're going to have to deal with in the next little while, and what I'm seeing is a growing number of people in the community that are prepared to step in and start to help fill those gaps. I'm launching a group this afternoon specifically for that will start to bring together all the different people that are looking at part of the problem and trying to solve it, and seeing if we can make sure that the assistance that is available goes to the people that absolutely need it. So if people over the age of 80 have children or relatives that can buy their stuff online, then we need that to happen, because we're going to need to keep the space for this incredibly growing number of people that are going to be essentially dependent on charity to get through the next 6 months. There are real questions about the extent which things will snap back, as the Prime Minister says. I suspect that we'll have new habits. We won't be buying our lunch as often. We won't be going to restaurants as often. I'm not sure that I'm going to spend $200 getting my grey hair dyed ever again. And the fact that I have no eyebrows is starting to not bother me as much. I think there'll be a range of changes that will happen. We're already seeing kids move home again, which is pretty terrible for the parents, but sometimes that's all they can do. We'll have major housing issues. But I think we'll start seeing in the next 6 months people starting to find other solutions. And I'm not sure it's going to snap back when people realise they can work from home, when business gets used to that. I mean, there are big businesses out there, and I won't name them, but I know one big business who for the last 2 years has been saying to people, if you want to be a manager in this organisation, you're going to spend 2 days working from home because you have to demonstrate that you can manage a remote team. Now, they've been doing that for 2 years because they know that's where we're going. So, in some ways it's accelerated a trend that was already happening, and we will find less people buying their lunch in business areas. We'll find less people staying and going to a bar after for a drink with their colleagues. We'll find more people working from home in different ways. And we'll find people realising that they had too much staff and cleaning out the houses. You can see people starting to do that now. And so things are going to change. So the extent to which it snaps back to what it is now is still unknown. But we're going to have to do a hell of a lot of work on the government and opposition side over the next few months, working out how we manage, if you like, a transition from where we are now to where we want to be in 6 months or a year. That was very depressing, wasn't it? But sorry about that. But on the other hand, but what I would say, and the reason why I guess I'm finding it depressing is that for me it's actually I actually love. I'm an introvert. I just love being home on my own. You know, I'm still paid. I'm still working, and I actually love being home on my own. So there's a lot for me, which is really quite comfortable. There are other people in a similar situation to me who still have jobs who are finding being at home isolated appalling and really dreadful, and are starting to have serious mental health issues for it. Then we have a whole stack of people who will be on partial pay, JobKeeper, job seeker, negotiating rent or negotiating mortgages, which they will then pay for when the economy comes back, so that they will owe more money when this is over. But then we have this other group of people for whom this is absolute hell. There is no income, no rental security, and nowhere to go. And so we're almost in a range of different groups of people. And you know, those of us that are doing okay are really going to have to start putting in to assist those that aren't. That's it. It is a bit depressing, isn't it?
Well, thanks, Julie. But I suppose one of the most interesting things will be is that when we do have influenza in the future, I think we'll be able to cope with that a lot better with all the skills that we have learned. So. Well,
yeah, I think that's right. When I go overseas with the army, which I do from time to time, the military is into such hand washing. You wouldn't be allowed into the food hall, whatever they call it, refectory, whatever, the dining hall, without doing this incredible hand wash, you know. So, and most countries of the world, they actually do that, you know, and my Muslim community is laughing because the Muhammad advice for Ramadan was wash your hands, don't go into infected areas, and, you know, so for them, they're kind of gone, you know, this is what we do every day when we go to the mosque. So there's a lot of people in the community for whom it's normal, but so because we've lived in such a comfortable country and we've had such a, you know, we're so lucky. We really haven't had to worry about it in the ways that other countries have. It's a bit of a shock for us, I think, but for a lot of people, it's a normal thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why some of our communities, like the Sikhs and the Tamils and some of our Islamic communities, were so fast to come in and provide food, because they've been through situations before where there were real shortages, and you know, people my age just haven't. I've never experienced it.
Julie, I do notice, Malcolm Brown speaking, I do notice that the people who die in Australia, their ages are given 91, 85, 97, and one brutal approach you could take to this virus is that it's coming through, it's getting rid of the old and the unfit, and develop immunity, and this is just a disease which will come through and will clean society up and leave us fitter to handle the future. That's a brutal attitude, but in the end, do you think that perhaps we're going to have to accept the fact there's this dreadful virus and it's taking away people who are not quite able to cope?
Thank you, Malcolm.
Hey, I don't like the sound of that, Malcolm.
No, look, yeah, look, I know, and I know. Look, I know. I think we're living in a world where the medical expertise has led to us, feeling very safe for a long time. This is not the first nasty virus, by the way. There was the Hendra virus and the bird flu and SARS. So we're actually getting one every year at the moment, or quite frequently. This one's just taken off. So this won't be the last one at all. I aren't prepared to subscribe to the idea that we just let it rip. My dad's just gone into hospital and he's being tested for it at the moment. So, but even if that wasn't the case, I don't think we can do that. And the reality of letting it rip really is that you do get to the stage like they got in Italy, where you simply said that if you're over the age of 60, we're just not letting you into the hospital. We are also seeing young people die of it, and we don't know why. We're seeing young people that are otherwise healthy. We have seen a couple of young children, 13, 14. So we don't know enough about this yet. We really don't know enough about this. And, if you let it, I mean, even if you took that view that, let's let it rip, you're still going to have people, let's not even go there. Let's not go there. Let's not go there. I'm not going there.
Malcolm sometimes helps Donald Trump with his speech writing too, by the way.
I know, and it's a really interesting thing sometimes to take off your humanity and your concern for humanity and just look at things from the perspective of nature itself and what nature does, with animals that become too comfortable. But we're human beings that kind of have real, love for a few people over the age of 60.
Julie, I've got a question.
Good one, Julie.
Julie, I do have a question for you. I think the whole world's been really heartened by the politicians being able to work together during these times, and they seem to be able to do it and push through some very good support systems for people. Is this something we can look forward to in the future?
I would hope there are some positives that come out of it. I mean, it's been really great in particular to see the government and the union movement work together, as they did quite well. But we're still seeing the cracks. We're still seeing, the criticisms of the teachers' union at the moment, by some members of Parliament. And quite frankly, my expectation of the teachers' union is that their job at the moment is to be caring for the health of their workers. That should be their contribution to the debate, and others should argue different lines. So we're still seeing that. I fear that we'll revert back to the ideological positions of, if we want the economy to recover, you need to cut wages. So I suspect we'll see reversion to some of those positions where there is profound disagreement about how you make an economy grow. But there have been some positive things, and even the National Cabinet, which is really just COAG, by the way, it's not really something new, it just meets more often. But the possibility of handling some really basic stuff where there should be agreement through those mechanisms is actually quite heartening. From the Labor perspective, and I'll be partisan for a minute, it's just as well we're in opposition at the moment, otherwise I'm not sure we would have the same level of cooperation, because it's been very hard for us to agree to some of the stuff that we have agreed to. We might develop some new habits, we might, but I suspect we will go very quickly back to those real differences. I think you make the economy grow by putting money in the hands of the customer. Right, I don't think you make the economy grow by putting money in the hands of the business until the business earns it. And they're the two different views that we will have again. We're already hearing about, industrial relations as being the flexibility in the workplace, etc. Although we're seeing incredible flexibility now, and it could see that the fact that businesses are automatically and have to work in more flexible ways, that might flow through. And I'm doing stuff with my staff now, which I've always done, but at the moment all of my staff are working from home. So in the next week or so, and we insisted for the last 2 weeks that they do it in the traditional way because we wanted their systems to work. So we've been making sure that their IT works, and we needed to do that while we're all in the same room. But over the next couple of weeks, we'll be sitting down and they'll be working out when is the best time for them to work, because some of them have to share parenting. They've got children. They can't necessarily work a 9-to-5 day. They'll want to work a Thursday night or a Saturday. And we will sit down and work out how what is now 9 of us can work in our own timeframes and still be together at the times that we need. And if you can start doing that with businesses like mine, or organisations like mine, then you can start doing that with a whole range of others as well. And so we might find flexibility kind of creeps in because it can, and people start to find other ways of working. But I'm hopeful we can work more closely together. We used to quite well, by the way. 95% of before the Tony Abbott kind of phase, we used to have about 95% of legislation passed with the support of major parties. And then when that fell down to about 70%, then that creates a space for the independents to come in. But if both major parties are working together, you get a much better answer. When the government changes, you don't do it. You both have to agree on it. You work it through. And we did that for decades. Australia did it for decades. You have to remember that up until the last year of John Howard, there'd only been a government with the majority in both houses of Parliament once. So every single piece of legislation we've had, except for 2 terms since the war, has been supported by both sides of politics. It's different now, but we can go back to that.
Yeah. Is there anyone else with questions at this stage? Okay.
Yeah, I think, Barry, some of the
Yeah, go on, John.
I was just going to say, I actually think there's been, we do talk of good, and Julie talked to some good there, but some of the things that we've made in advances, even technology-wise, in terms of, you were saying that people being able to work differently and from home, I think some of these and some of the legislation would have been, probably fought out in Parliament probably for years, possibly, debating what was secure, what wasn't, etc., etc. And I think some of this has probably moved some of that forward and a lot faster and brought things, at least made us, will now at least make us have to consider some of those changes along the way. So
yeah, yes and no. We've again, on the Labor side, we've always supported the tech, the security stuff, even though it wasn't in our interest to do so. We get beaten up every day. I still get people email me every day saying we shouldn't have supported it, and we've tended to be pretty good at supporting that stuff, even though we find some of it not. And then we try and build in a review process, where we review it over in a very short period of time, so we can make changes. I suspect that if this had have gone to the Parliament in that last thing, even before this, we probably would have tried to make some changes to it, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's hard to know. I just know from a Labor perspective that we voted for a whole stack of stuff and gritted our teeth while we did it, because there were really good elements in it, and we couldn't knock those off. And the government historically won't separate stuff for us. So if we want to vote for the good stuff, we have to vote for the bad stuff at the same time. So we quite often do, and then we get beaten up for it. But that's the way of it. But I will be downloading the app. Even though I don't think it goes far enough, I will be downloading the app because I'm a member of Parliament, and I'm going with the democratically elected sort of decision-making process. So I don't think I have the right not to. But when Parliament resumes, I will be arguing for clearer understanding of how the security works, how quickly it's deleted, how it's stored. I'll be arguing for all of that. And I always like these things to be open and transparent, so that the extraordinary expertise we have around the country can have their say on it. But I'll be downloading it. I would understand the people that don't, but I will be doing it because I'm a member of the Parliament. So.
Okay.
I've already downloaded it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, for me, for example, I'm completely self-isolating. So there's a group of 6 in my little group, and my partner, my 2 stepkids, and my 2 grandkids. That's it. We're a closed group. We don't really see anyone else. So, and I don't hang around in a shop for more than 15 minutes. So I don't think anybody will ping on my phone at all, unless I'm home. And I know.
Oh, just lost her. She must have pinged too much. Well, look, while Julie is gone, I'd just like to thank her anyway, so it'll be recorded. I'd like to thank Savannah for coming along today, Ian. And,
yes, thank you, Barry.
And Warnie. Looking forward. I'm trying to line up someone for next week as a guest speaker, but in a few weeks' time, we've got Rani Heyman coming on board. She's a ABC and television and radio journalist, and she'll be giving us an up-to-date view on communications and networking in today's world. So have a nice week, everyone, and thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks for organising. Appreciate it.
No problems.
Thanks,
See you all.
Barry.